Do you feel Muslims are aware of their heritage today?
The more I studied and delved into our history, the more stunned I was that most of us are oblivious to our history. It's the only genocide to take place on European soil since the Holocaust. And when I asked them this question, 70% said they had no idea. 70%, can you believe it? Had no idea what happened. How do we not know about it?
There is a lot of stuff out there which misrepresents Islam. What advice would you have for people? How can people navigate that?
Nationalism is poisoned us tremendously. Islamic history is full of such great stories that we are just sitting on. You have to accept the fact that if you want to do something, and when anyone does anything, they should aim to perfect it and do it the best that they possibly can do it.
What would you say, anyone out there who wants to be a Muslim creative, what would you say their role is? What should they be thinking about?
We need to step out of our own mindset and realize that the Muslim story is one story. The door has been pushed wide open for anyone to become a content creator.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and a very warm welcome to the Narrative House podcast. I'm your host Adnan Khan. So today my guest is a brother who is a content producer, he's a storyteller, he's a historian, and he has a background in Islamic societies and cultures. Khalid Hameed-Ud-Din, welcome to Narrative House.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa rahmatullah. It's good to have you here. Now, I just want to remind you all that you can find us on all social media platforms. Please like and subscribe because this helps us with the algorithm and you'll never miss a show. So Khalid, I've always wanted to be a creative. I've always wanted to produce content, but I'm not very good at producing content and I'm not very creative as well. Okay. So it's actually really good to have you here. To your channel, Rampant Breeze, it can be found on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. Khalid, tell me about your journey. What was the spark that brought about Rampant Breeze?
Well, the spark that brought Rampant Breeze about... Well, Rampant Breeze, the name itself is something that I made a long, long time ago, about 15 years ago, when I made my YouTube channel. And I didn't really, to be honest, put a great deal of thought into it. But the thought behind it was that rampant meaning, because my mind is creative and rampant, it's always working. And then breeze is that there's also a part of me that's quite serene. So together, that's a manifestation, I think, of my persona. But that's that. In terms of, if you wanted to know a current account that I'm doing, Rampant Breeze. Well, there's a long history, really, to that. I think I've always been very creative as a youngster. Didn't really fit into school. I didn't fit into school. It's safe to say I wasn't built for school. When I was going through the school system, and obviously there's certain expectations when you're growing up in a mixed household. I'm half Pakistani, half Irish, so my father was very keen on me to be a doctor a lot of the time.
Mine too.
Yeah. So eventually, it was clear that I was going more in the creative direction. And I was very drawn towards film. A lot of the time, when I was younger and growing up as a Muslim in a non-Muslim area, I would say, I couldn't really socialize with I had great friends at college. It was fantastic. But when it came to socializing with them, I couldn't. And because, they went to the clubs and the bars and, I couldn't. So I stayed at home and I would go just to the cinema all the time. Everything I would do is be going to the cinema. And that really built a narrative framing in my mind that was already predispositioned to it.
Right.
And then when I wrote a screenplay, I think that I decided I wanted to write my own screenplay because there were things that I wanted to say that I didn't feel I could enter into any established channel in order to express. So I went about creating my own luck. And really it was during COVID that I started this channel, essentially. Initially, it was because... the drama Divilis Ertuğrul, if you've heard of the drama Divilis Ertuğrul, at that time, that made me realize that you know what? There's a hunger for storytelling. There's a hunger for people to know their history, and there's a gap really in the market. We should go for it. We should try it, and then here we are.
So it was the article that radicalized you, yeah?
Well, you could say it was to some degree. No, I mean, maybe to some degree it was, if you think about it. Yeah, at that time, what I realized was that there was the power of drama in Islamic drama, because I was never interested before. I was more interested into the mainstream productions. But when it came to Ertugrul, I realized that you could combine the history with the faith effectively. That was the main thing, effectively. And so, that was one of the many things really that got me doing it. So
your channel, especially on Instagram, Islam and Islamic history really comes across. I think most of your videos are on that. And I think you're right. The article actually awakened a lot in many people, actually, the history. So you mentioned the first part of Rampant, how you come up with that name. Rampant Breeze is your channel's name. How did you come up with that?
Well, it was the same thing, really, as my thought process. I didn't change. When I made the name initially, about 15 years ago, I called it Rampant Breeze for the reasons I explained aforementioned, because that was a reflection of my persona. So when I started my channel, I didn't think it was going to develop so much. And then I just stuck with it, and it just came across like that. I thought, okay, it works. Right. Haven't had any complaints yet.
So your channel, you've got many videos on identity, on legacy, on history. Why is this theme so important to you?
Wow.
Or why do you feel it's so important for people to even know?
I think it's really important because we don't know really who we are in the present time until we truly know our context in the world today. And in order to know the context in the world today, we need to know the entire story of the Muslim identity, And first of all, I got into doing this event in 2022. My account initially was more light-hearted content, some parodies. I was doing some even, just non-serious content. But when I wanted to change the direction of this channel, I spent the last 2 years studying, I would say, the equivalent to a master's degree in terms on my own. Obviously, I don't have the piece of paper to waive it in addition, to my other degree that I got. But it was intense amount of study. And the more I studied and delved into our history, the more stunned I was that most of us are oblivious to our history. And it's shocking, really, and it's upsetting. One of the, and we may get onto this point soon, but for instance, the Bosnian genocide. How can, when you learn about the history that's affected us all, the colonization of Muslim lands post-Ottoman Empire, I wonder why we're not made aware of this. And I know why, but maybe we can cover that as
that was my next question, actually. Do you feel Muslims are aware of their heritage today? And honestly, there's a lot of heritage they're not aware of. Why do you feel that is? Like, I'm from the subcontinent, and I would say probably in the last decade, I've learned more. I was aware Islam's been in the subcontinent for a long time. I didn't know it's been there for 1,000 years. Really early 800s. And only now am I learning more of the details, becoming more aware of the Mughal era and prior to that. So that's just my journey, but that's just one region. So many other regions, Islam was quite vast. What sort of things have you come across? Why do you feel there's a lot of heritage Muslims just aren't aware of?
Well, yes, there's a tremendous amount of heritage we're not aware of. We have the Muslim story is a story of plurality. And I suppose in this current day and age, when sectarianism is so rife within us, we tend to look at life and also, I suspect, history through the prism of our own mindset. We need to step out of our own mindset and realize that the Muslim story is one story. That when we pull ourselves out, we can see Muslims of all persuasions, of different, groups, united in the same principle. And the reason I don't think, first of all, we know about this is because the storytelling mechanisms that inform us of our history are not present there in the Muslim world. They're not present, sadly. And for instance, I would say, the tragedy of the Holocaust, for instance, if we look at the Holocaust, everybody knows about the Holocaust, rightly so. Not just at school, but through every type of media, film, documentaries, on a subliminal level, on a subconscious, on a conscious level, everybody knows about it. But when it comes to the Muslim world, let's take the Bosnian genocide, for instance. The Bosnian genocide is the only genocide to take place on European soil since the Holocaust. And, literally, I surveyed my audience on Instagram. I asked them the question, do you know what happened in Bosnia? Bearing in mind, we're talking just 30 years ago. It's not long.
Yeah, it's not long.
I think 70% of my audience, or 80% of my audience, is under the age of 35, so it's very young. And when I asked them this question, 70% said they had no idea. 70%, can you believe it? Had no idea what happened. And that stunned me. You can't blame the finger at any Muslim in particular. The problem is something with the community, that we don't have these mechanisms in our society to tell us, because there's stigma and there's taboo over the creative arts, sadly. It's just really, really upsetting in that regard. So we have to start.
So my daughter, actually, she's just doing her GCSEs at the moment. She asked me about a year ago, like, what happened in Bosnia. And I grew up in the 90s. I was quite young then. And I remember, so if you're the child of Pakistani parents, you always told her one day we'll be going back home, which I never understood then. And it was like, we're born here, why would we go back home? It was because there was a feeling then that a Holocaust can happen again. And when I was growing up, we didn't believe it. I thought, here we go, my parents again. And then when the Bosnian genocide happened, it was like, okay, whoa, this is what they meant.
Yeah.
So, my child's asking, I'm from that era. And I remember at the time, I didn't want to explain it to my daughter. I wanted her to understand this. And storytelling would be the perfect way to do it. That would actually be the perfect way to do it. And you can imagine there's so many incidents in history you need to know about. And you can have the long-form documentary style, which is probably for certain people only. And I think storytelling, especially what you've done on your channel, probably is a really good way. Even to spark interest in some event in history. But Bosnia especially, there's so many parts to it, what happened. And yes, subhanAllah, it's not that long ago, as you said. It's not really
that long ago, but the thing is that, social media, I like writing screenplays. My interest was in performance and screenplay. So I wanted to always early on be going to acting and film. I loved it. But you see, I asked myself the question, if I go into film, and if I wanted to be, let's say, just for instance, I wanted to go into acting, which was one side of it. If I wanted to progress, I would have to compromise myself at some point. You can't, you see, I'm not criticizing any Muslim that goes into that. I understand it because I loved it. It was my passion. I really, really wanted to do it. But you have to accept the fact that if you want to do something, and when anyone does anything, they should aim to perfect it and do it the best that they possibly can do it. if you want to go down that road, you will have to make a choice. You will have to make a compromise. And I just felt it's very difficult. You know, I don't think I could do that. So I wrote my own luck. Actually, I mean, you introduced me as a historian, which is very flattering. I think you could call me, I wouldn't say I'm a historian. I'm a creative storyteller. I'm predominantly a storyteller with an interest in history. Let's put it like that. But I decided to make my own luck before, actually, I should have touched on this before I touched on, went into my content creating on my social media. I wrote a screenplay that by chance, you know, it ended up on the table or the head of production at HBO, which was, which was that time for someone who never really felt that he fitted in to on many different levels into this world. I finally thought, yes, okay, I've got it. I kind of like know where I belong, you know? I know where I belong in the creative aspects. And I knew that I have to use what Allah has given me in terms of my skill set to get the message across. For me, it's storytelling. And then, sadly, and I don't really like the fact, but everyone's on social media. You have to work through the medium of social media. I love film predominantly, but the importance is getting the message out there and across. And the best way you can possibly do that is, instead of these TikTok videos, Instagram, the amount of meaningless content on there that's filling our young with all sorts of nonsense and whatever ideas they're coming with.
I was just going to say, so the internet must have been the best invention for you, but you have an alternative view to that. Because obviously without the internet, really, unless you're lucky and your script or your project lands on someone's desk, really that was the only option. Whilst with the internet, it has opened up opportunities for a lot of individuals. And you can be self-resourced, really. The days of where you've got to have something really expensive set. The internet's opened out from that perspective, because there's actually a lot of content producers online. I mean, whether it's Islamic history or anything. So the internet's created that. But you're right, actually. I, funny enough, actually did a piece of research when I was at university, late 90s, when the internet was first starting. And, you know, our view then was the internet will just give information at your fingertips. Everyone will have the same amount of information. You can make better decisions. People will be more knowledgeable. What we didn't realize at the time was the amount of noise that would be out there. So if you look at the challenge today, it's what's true, what's not true. There's a lot of noise out there. And we just didn't know that at the time. We just thought if everyone's got information, they'll make better decisions. Here we are 30, 40 years down the line. But there's a lot more information out there, but are people making better decisions? Are people more aware? No, actually, there's a lot of stuff out there that's actually misrepresentative of what's going on, and even Islam itself. That nicely leads to my next question, actually, is there is a lot of stuff out there which misrepresents Islam. You know, what advice would you have for people? How can people navigate that? Because someone like my daughter wants to learn about Bosnia. You can actually learn stuff about Bosnia, which is the other side, and give you a completely different view. We're going through the genocide in Gaza at the moment, and you've got all sorts of alternative views about it. So what have you come across, and any advice for anyone?
Well, the issue is here. So I'll give you an example. When I wanted to learn about the Bosnian genocide, I did my research as expected. And I wanted to, because I'm a very visual person, so I love watching documentaries, films. I really love it. But the thing is that when I went on YouTube, when I searched the internet for content about the Bosnian genocide, there was nothing. Had this been, but let's say we know about other tragedies that have happened in the non-Muslim world, the non-Muslim community. We all know about it. The Holocaust is always the best example. So how do we go about finding the right resource? Well, to be honest with you, it's very difficult because there's hardly anything there. I looked on every social media platform, first of all, to see what was available on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. There's nothing. I thought, okay, then. Well, I have to make something then. That's why it was a sense of duty. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but that's exactly what needed to be done. And you have to source your information from, well, when you research, people who have, research topics at university, they know this very well. You just have to do your research through a multiple of doctoral papers, if you can get those, and do cross-referencing and just build up your pool of information from there. Because there's nothing really online that you can, well, apart from a bit here and a bit there, that you can really inform yourself about,
I suppose like the more recent events, there's probably a lot more literature around. Obviously, the further you go back in history, that can be a challenge. Like your Bosnia series, did you go to Bosnia?
No, I haven't been to Bosnia. No, I'd love to go to the Potocari Memorial Centre.
Because there are people alive today who were victims.
Oh, they are.
of the Bosnian
They're
genocide.
messaging me often, especially when it came out, messaging me and telling me their stories, and it's heartbreaking. But I have to stress, how do we not know about it?
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, how can, in Bosnia, 80,000 Bosniaks were murdered. 80,000. That's a conservative number. Between 1992 and 1995, that's 80,000. Half of those were civilians. It is comparable to the massacre in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza happening now. Imagine in 30 years' time, if someone does a survey on their Instagram or whatever social media app's available in 30 years' time and says, do you know what happened in Gaza? And 70% of people say no.
Mm.
It's like I said, we can't point the finger at anyone, but at the end of the day, it's quite shameful for us as a community, I think. And this is why we need creatives to awaken, this and act, because there's the talents there. They just have to feel welcomed to be creative.
So Khalid, I would assume a lot of people watching this, they've probably got this on their mind. How do you reconcile storytelling creativity with Islam? Is there a conflict, or is it okay? What would you say to that?
Well, with that, is there a conflict? Well, first of all, if we look in the Holy Quran, Allah teaches us through stories. Yeah? This is how He teaches us. I think we are storytellers. We've all got the that auntie or that uncle that wants to sit us down and say, Bita, you know what happened, this time or this
Back
time
in the
20
day.
years ago or whatever, so we have that. It's in us to tell stories.
Mm.
Sadly, we're not. We just, I try to always look and honor my Islamic tradition when I embark upon a creative project. I can't find anything wrong with telling stories, but it's normally the industry that it's in that's problematic, as opposed to the art of telling stories.
Mm.
And so, yes, I don't think there's anything problem. I'm not a scholar of the religion, so obviously I don't have an authority in what I'm saying, but my conscience is clear when I embark upon this. And I just feel like it's giving me a sense of purpose and meaning, and hope, and people are benefiting. So I'm proud of that.
No, you're absolutely right. The Quran makes use of storytelling. We've got lots of stories of previous civilizations, which are examples for us. You've got previous prophets. These are all examples for us. In fact, when I've done a bit of research, the storytelling is actually an ancient method of explaining history, explaining things to people. People love a good story, as you mentioned. What would you say? Are there any etiquettes or adab people should keep in mind when it comes to storytelling in Islam?
Well, that's, I suppose, a question for, I would say that's a question for scholars, but the problem is I haven't seen much guidance from scholars with regards to the creative arts, sadly.
Yeah.
That's the issue, is that we always defer to our tradition to know what is the right thing to do and what's not. Sadly for creatives, maybe it's because the creative mindset, and it's an assumption what I'm saying here, but I feel it's true. The creative mindset is something that the clergy don't have. So they don't understand the mindset of a creative. And the creative mind is very, very different. and it's had very little guidance through the Islamic tradition.
Mm.
Ideally, I would defer that question to in terms of
maybe
etiquette.
that can be your next project.
I don't know etiquettes, but etiquettes. I just would think this: keep the story truthful.
Definitely, yeah.
Keep the story. When it comes to etiquettes, we don't lower ourselves to profanity or vulgarity when we do it. We talk with the best of speech. Aim always for perfection in what we're doing. You know, that quality of always excelling and perfecting. We have to have that mindset. And, you know, that to me there's all that's needed, really. And a good intention, of course, what you want to do it for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up, if you're from the subcontinent, you hear all about these stories, which are like borderline fables.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it is important when we're talking about the past, we're accurate as much as possible. But storytelling really it's a mode. It's a medium to explain something to someone from something that happened in the past. So we want to be truth to the event in the past. And, you know, we're Muslims, we're accountable for being truthful. So I think that's really important. So your pieces, do you create them all yourself?
Yes.
Do them all yourself? It's all the research,
yes,
preparation. And what about the actual production that you do? That's
me.
Yourself as well. Oh, wow. So you are the beginning, the middle, and the end.
I don't want to rely on anyone. You see, I've had when you've tried to be in the creative process for quite a while, and you rely on people, you always get disappointed. So this is one of the advice that I would give to all people who want to go into content creating. Try and master and cover as many skills as you can as possible. Because the less you rely on people, the more control and the more efficient you are in producing your content. You know, likewise, for instance, I research my own script, I write my own script, and I present and perform the script. Now, what that does is that once you've researched something, once you've written it yourself, when it comes to presenting it and performing it, your heart is in it. You've embodied it, as opposed to just getting a writer to write the script and then, you know, an actor reading it. The heart's not going to be there. I mean, if it's an exceptional actor, it might be. But practically speaking, anyone who studies and takes ownership of the material that they are putting out, you can tell their heart's going to be in it, and it will become an engaging piece of content, you know.
So AI, is that a good thing? Has it helped your process?
It has. I'm not a fan of AI, surprisingly, I have to say, but the thing is, I would much rather in an ideal world not use AI. That's the truth. However, this is the way the world is going. It's allowed content creators and storytellers to tell stories in a way that is cost effective, you know, and they can become very engaging and creative stories through that. The AI technology, the generative video technology is just incredible what it's done. Yeah. And it's affordable to the average person now. So the door has been pushed wide open for anyone to become a content creator. So if you don't ride that wave, everyone else will ride that wave and you'll fall back. So it's really important that, you know, you got to keep your personal opinions really to yourself. That's how I feel. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'm not so keen on AI, but I keep it to myself in that sense because I have to get on board.
Some really interesting AI videos I've seen online. I can't remember what platform it is. Someone types in, you wake up on the day of Battle of Badr, and they put in a bit of a description and it generates a video. And I mean, I've read what the situation was, but because it's in story visual format, actually it's really interesting. You've awoken when the Constantinople's fallen to the Ottomans, and it's generated a whole video, and you get a feel of how things were at the time.
I don't use that type of software, so that's quite new to me, that one.
So, you know, obviously there is an opinion amongst Muslims about, drawing and things like that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But with AI, you're not doing any physical drawing. You're typing in a prompt, and the algorithm does it all. And obviously, the more clear you are with your prompt and your description, it will generate something for you. But, you know, if you want to explain, so I'd be interested to see you wake up in Bosnia on this particular date, and you give it all the information it needs, and it will generate a short video for you, and it will give you a feel of how things are. And I think that would be good for someone like my daughter to get a feel of what's actually going on. And well, if you go back 5 years ago, this sort of thing wasn't available. It's down to the individual storyteller, how vivid he or she can be. So in that sense, AI would actually be really useful. I found those videos really interesting.
I mean, I wouldn't, for Bosnia, I wouldn't use AI, because like the video that I made on Bosnia was very simple. But because it affected me so personally, I wanted to address the audience as much as I could in person because of how it affected me. And to be honest, I wasn't using AI then, so that's another point. But I wouldn't have done it anyway. I would not have used AI with Bosnia for very historical pieces that I've started to use. Most of my videos are not AI because it's only something I've used in my last couple of videos. Which now, because I'm migrating more towards the YouTube format, all my content initially was intended for Instagram. But then when someone I went onto YouTube one day and someone pretended to be me and made an account pretending to be me and started uploading all my Instagram videos to YouTube. I thought, you know what? I've got to start doing
it. Got to claim it.
Because
your channel.
They were starting to like respond to people as if they were me, and into the comment. And that scared me. So I thought I better wise up to these things. Let me go on there. So I went on there. So that's why now content will take a little bit longer to produce. But that's where my content, because I don't like telling short stories in the sense that short meaning 1.5 minute to 2 minute stories. You can't tell a story. Initially, I wanted to grab people's attention. Social media, our attention spans are really short. But that I'm not comfortable in. I need room to like tell the story. And my mind lends itself better to the YouTube format. So
do you have any time scale in mind when you're producing these videos?
In terms of when they're going to be like released?
No, in terms of how long the video will be. Like, do you have a 1 minute video, 3 minute video?
Yeah. I mean, it depends what format it will be made for. For Instagram or TikTok, if I make a video, to be honest with you, because the attention span is so short of the viewer, even 1 minute video is long on TikTok. Because everyone's mind now is being trained to be like their attention span is very short now. It's
seconds, I think.
It's seconds. It's like music, people jumping up and down, and it's incredible the type of engagement these posts get. But anyway, good for the people who are making it. It's up to them. But I wanted to, generally speaking, if it's for TikTok or Instagram, I'll keep it 1 minute, 2 minutes. But now they are getting longer, the videos.
Yeah. So what kind of impact is your work having, or what sort of impact would you like to have?
Well, there's the impact. First of all, I've been quite overwhelmed. I've been quite touched because a lot of people are saying thank you. And that really touches me. That, like, they're learning something. There are so many people that, there are so many great people that have lived not that long ago. And if I'm the person that, let's say, the recent video I've done on a lady from Aceh, Din. Most people would never have heard of Din. If I'm the reason that someone's hears the name of this incredible woman, I'm deeply, deeply honoured. I truly am. And I think, aside from that, in times in my life where I've had, where we all go through very dark periods in our life, it's given me such a sense of purpose, such a sense of meaning and nourishment of I mean it, because I'm living for a purpose bigger than myself. And, if you live for that and you do something greater than yourself, it's amazing. It sounds, a bit doolally, but it's not. It's true. It really nourishes you.
So your topics, how do you choose your topics?
Topics, really, first of all, there's an endless basket of topics I can take. I could just put my hand down and pick up a topic out of the basket, and then I can just do something. But if I have to narrow it down, on occasion, sometimes I will, depend if there's an event happening today that runs parallel. So, for instance, because of Gaza, it's really important to let's say, tell the story of Sharif Hussein of Mecca. it's really important to tell the story of Fakhruddin Pasha, the defender of Medina. These stories that really give us an insight into why we are in the situation that we're in. Other than that, I look for a great story to tell. Like, what stories could be told from the content that I'm producing? Now, for instance, I'll give you an example. The Islamic history is full of such great stories that we are just sitting on. So when I pick them, I think this could be big. This could be a big story for a big screen. Like there's one story of Kumala Hayati. Most people have never heard of Mala Hayati. Her name is Kumala Hayati. She was from the Aceh Sultanate at the time in which the Portuguese came and attempted to colonize the Sultanate of Aceh, which is in the northern tip of Sumatra. And this woman, her husband was killed. He was martyred. She was widowed. And she decided that she's going to take on the Portuguese herself. So she got an army of widows, all the women who've lost their husbands. She got them all together and she formed an army. It's called the Inong Bali. It was called the Inong Bali. And they got, and it's just incredible. She defeated the Portuguese on that ship. She just, like, it's such an epic story. No one knows about it. And, you know, even you could imagine if we were sitting on this, if the West was sitting on these stories, they would be everywhere. They would be doing reboots of this story, but we don't do anything with them. You know, that's what's so upsetting. So we have to start. This is the whole point, inshallah.
Inshallah. Do you ever get any pushback on some of the topics? You mentioned Sharif Hussein. I'm sure you got people with other views out there. You ever get any pushback?
All the time. But you see, we're so our mindsets are so nationalistically orientated that when people see these men and women that were rooted and grounded in an Islamic tradition, because of nationalism and the advent of nationalism since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, what's actually happened is that the Muslim identity has been muddied, I would say, with a nationalistic framing. So if I show an Islamic hero, let's say, I think there's one lady, her name was Lala Fatma Ansumer. You would get, she was in the, she resisted the French. She led a resistance. She's called the Muslim Joan of Arc. I think many of your viewers would know the Joan of Arc. She's called the Muslim Joan of Arc. And she mesmerized her own people because of her saintly quality. She was considered a wali. You know, this is her. She came from that lineage, Sufi tariqa. Her father was a marabout. Her grandfather was from a family of Islamic scholars. And when I name this, this is just one example of so many videos that I've got. People try to claim her and are fierce and fervent in their desire to claim them. No, she was Arab. No, she was Amazigh. No, you know, all of these. It's like, why are you so worried where she's from? Look at the meaning of her life. She was a Muslim. She did this. It was her jihad. It doesn't matter what part of the land you're in. We are Muslims. We are one. It's exactly the same thing with Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi in Algeria. Great man, but there's always, you know, who resisted the French, who defeated the French temporarily in the colonization of Algeria. People want to take ownership of him on nationalistic grounds. And my point is, in making these videos for all of these people, they are men and women that were rooted in an Islamic tradition. And when we take these men and women that were rooted in an Islamic tradition and we try to claim a nationalistic ownership over them, which is completely alien to the Islamic tradition, you could say, sully their legacy. And that's shameful for us. We should really now, considering we're living in a world where Muslims are attacked on every level, we need to embody the reasons why they fought. That's what we need to do.
No, absolutely. I mean, when we're looking at any, or especially Muslim history, this is your identity, and in fact, the motivation for a lot of the historical people we look at, their motivation was Islam. You find their actions were sometimes to defend Islam. Other times, it was other challenges Muslims faced, and many of these nationalistic calls, well, these are all like less than 100 years old, which should actually raise the question. When people are viewing things through a nationalistic lens, that only stresses back, 60, 70 years. I mean, subcontinent, these nations are 70, 75 years old? So really it shows you've got a 1,000-year Islamic history and you've got a 70-year-old Pakistani history, or even less, Bangladeshi history.
Well, and when more you go into the history, the more you just become surprised, and your stereotypes and your perceptions of that you had are just crushed. I mean, I was really surprised to find, and it's, let's say when someone says the term Sufi or tasawwuf in today's day, it's innovator, haram, haram, innovator. And the thing is that, okay, fine. We have developed a sectarian mindset, sadly, a lot of us have. However, history tells us something a little bit different. That when the Ottoman Empire fell and the Muslim world was being carved up by the Europeans, the people who came to the rescue were the Sufis. That is, I'm not a Sufi myself, but I mean, I try to embody that principle of tasawwuf, but I'm not a Sufi myself, so I don't have any, benefit in mentioning this at all, apart from just the objective reality, which is that everywhere they were Sufis who did it. And when we look at Emir Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi in Algeria, Lala Fatima al-Sumer, or the great Umar al-Mukhtar, the Lion of the Desert, Sufi. Most people don't know he was a Sufi. He was a Sufi from the Sunusi Brotherhood, all in West Africa. Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio in Nigeria, Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba Mbake, all were from different Sufis, lineages, tariqas. However, they were united in their purpose to resist oppression. And that they have all become themselves, sadly, they've become national heroes. They've been taken as national heroes by their country. But they were all rooted in the same principle of fighting oppression and living for the sake of Allah. That's what the intention was behind it.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So finally, I want to speak to you about the Muslim creative today and going forward. What would you say, anyone out there, who wants to be a Muslim creative, what would you say their role is? What should they be thinking about?
I would say, look, when I started this, how I've come to the point that I've come has been a long journey. It's been a process. Like I said, I wanted to be in film. I loved acting, presenting, writing, because that's what I wanted to do. But I got to a stage in which I felt that something was missing. I always had this issue of what is meaningful in life. And I always struggled to find that meaning in life in terms of my expression in everyday settings. And it led me to telling stories of people that are far larger than I. Muslim creatives, what I would suggest is that you find your meaning. Look at your talent. What are you good at doing? And when we talk about meaning in life, okay, there's the larger sense of meaning that we are all subservient and we are adherents to the religion of al-Islam, and we are here to obey our Creator. However, within that, there's another sense of meaning that we can find. How do I make the most of myself as an individual with the talents that I've got to feel fulfilled on a personal level, but yet feel like I'm living that spirit as I'm going forward, if that makes sense. And so I would say, no matter what artistic background that you're from, first of all, excel in that art craft, and then find what is meaningful to you. Because when something is meaningful to you, it's like it's everything comes naturally. The creative ideas flow because you're living for something bigger than you. That's the whole point. And that's the first point I would say about.
So I think that is actually really important, because there's a lot of content producers who produce just to get hits and make money. And actually, as you mentioned, the Muslim creative is a bit more here. You're actually presenting your legacy, your history. You're presenting Islam, really. That's what you're doing. And that's something quite important for young, upcoming Muslim creatives, actually, because you could just turn it into a job, which it is for a lot of people, just producing content online. What would you say to the Muslim creative in terms of what's probably the biggest challenge they're going to face and how they should anticipate that and try and solve it? Or what are the major challenges for a Muslim creative?
Well, first of all, there's quite a few, sadly. Sadly, this is so upsetting. There's two layers to it. Firstly, traditionally, Muslim cultures, you touched upon it a little bit earlier. If someone is creatively inclined, if you're creative, you're creative. You can't help it. You're creative. But then if your father says, Beta, you're going to be a doctor, then you say, no, I want to work in film. Actually, to be honest, my father was very good. I'm going to say my dad was very good. He doesn't, but my
you got to praise him, yeah?
No, my father, mashallah, he was in that, he couldn't have been any better. But with my friends that I've seen, I've seen the toll it takes on them. I have a friend who's a film director. All he ever wanted to do is make film. He's both his parents are Pakistani.
Yeah.
And he's a film director, a good film director. But he lives with such a guilt and a shame that he didn't get his parents' blessing. I don't think he's done anything wrong. Because this is his mind. His mind naturally works this way. I remember him, having conversations with him and how upset he was. Because he just didn't want to make his parents unhappy. And for a lot of people who don't have a particularly strong personality and they have that creative mindset, they can get lost. They can be overwhelmed by the wish to please their parents, which of course is, after the worship of Allah, is the best thing you can do. I get it. And that's why it makes it more difficult, because of the status of listening to your parents. So that's one level. I think now, as the older generation is passing on, and it's now the generation in my generation now, and we're a little bit more minded. So I think this is a good sign. But I think also we will have another obstacle, another second layer to it is, I would say, within the tradition. So for instance, as a content creator, I find that, like I said, someone who tries to honor his tradition, legacy of his Islamic tradition, we tend to operate within the grey area of the law. You see, the number of times someone will say, this is haram, brother, this is haram, brother, this is haram, brother. You have to develop a thick skin and just say, this is what people are like.
What, as in people saying videos per se? Or?
Well, no, let's say if you use... Now, I didn't probably want to get into this particular subject, but music, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Though, now, of course, a lot of people... There is a diverse opinion on music. And I understand that, let's say, the majority opinion is that it's not permissible. There are some scholars who say it's permissible in the right context. What I think we need to do is that, not to be too harsh on the creatives, because, like social media, the algorithm is based upon trending sounds. If you want your greater message to get out there, the algorithm will push you forward if you have a trending sound. If we don't feel like we've got some wiggle room within the law, and that's why I say we don't want to obviously cross the line at all. No, but we operate within that grey area. Like with AI, I get people that say that AI is forbidden. Creating a character with eyes, you'll be asked to put life into this character on the Day of Judgment. You deal with all of these things, and it does affect you. It does affect you, but we have a massive problem in our community. We are completely underrepresented, misrepresented, and I think that within our ummah, incredible talent that feels so polarized, or has done in the past, because they just don't feel they can operate in an environment where they are fully comfortable and therefore flourish. That's how I how I look at it.
Khalid, what would you say are the two biggest misconceptions
About
when it comes to the Muslim creative? I mean, you touched on a few here, the music, things like that. I'm asking really from the perspective of, someone who wants to be a Muslim creative. This is probably something they need to be aware of. And probably when they grow in number, there'll probably be some sort of something put in place, really. I mean, you're right in one way. I'm trying to think, typically any work or job anyone does, there's potential halal and haram issues and you address them. Some are more well known. Because so many people work in the financial industry, you've got a lot more awareness and a lot more material. This year, there isn't a lot, but there probably isn't a lot of Muslim creatives. So I think the more people that enter into this area, probably these issues will come more and more to the surface, and there's going to have to be some sort of understanding, a solution of them. So you mentioned the music and things like that. What would you say is probably the biggest misconception?
The biggest misconception about Muslim creatives? Well, I don't think... I've never actually thought there's a misconception about a Muslim creative because, to be honest with you, I haven't seen a lot of them. So, to be like, there are some that who are. When you say Muslim creative, it also depends. Are you a Muslim and doing, let's say, different like secular, non-Islamic content, or if you're a Muslim creative that's doing specifically Muslim orientated?
Yeah, the Muslim stuff. So I would assume you'd get some people like, should you really address this like this? Should you really be touching on Islamic history? I mean, for example, you could do, because even, that film, The Message, there's a lot of work they did before the film was published. They got fatwas.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, they mentioned it in the film, what they had to do. And that film, I think, was 78, 79, where, the views we've got now are very different to then. Then it was just like, this is just... Everything was haram, really.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
At that time. And I remember they went to Al-Azhar, they went to the Saudi scholars, and still people were like... I think what they did with some of the scenes was effectively people talk to the camera, and what it's basically doing is the camera's the prophet.
Yeah.
You talk... That's how we got around that. I think the Sahaba's always been a bit of a touchy one, depends where you stand. And you get that. So I think probably there will be some historical events or eras where it's a bit like, don't touch it. Then we're going to reconcile that with how do you plan to teach future generations when this is the way they learn?
Well, that's the whole issue, and that's, you've hit the nail on the head there. What I think a lot of people, the elders of our time, don't really understand. I'm sure the enlightened amongst them do, but this entire world now spins upon the axis of media and entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's not even good entertainment or good art anymore. It's just a mass production of entertainment media. And the world spins on it. And the non-Muslim world is so far ahead of Muslims when it comes to this. It's really, really sad. Now, you mentioned the film, The Message. The man who made that film, The Message, was the producer of the classic horror movie, Halloween, with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Okay, yeah.
He was the one, and the actual series of Halloween films, the original series of Halloween films, he was the producer of it. His name was Mustafa Akkad, and he directed the film Lion of the Desert as well, which was the story on Omar al-Mukhtar. And, of course, The Message. Those were just the two films he directed. What that shows is that, if I was to mention any Islamic hero that, let's say, I've produced, the one name that everyone is more aware of than the others is Omar al-Mukhtar. Why? Because they made a film on Omar al-Mukhtar. And it wasn't just a good film, it was a very good film, and it had the cast was unbelievable. Anthony Quinn, he was a stellar actor. Oliver Reed, another fabulous actor. This was a top quality talent making this film. And this is what the Muslim world, we have such great stories, but that was probably the only story that I've seen in the West that I would say can be like a template. Look what it can do. Non-Muslims love it, because that's what I hope to do. Is I hope if I produce content, non-Muslims love it too, as a piece of entertainment, as anything. It's not a question. You have to entertain people, because that's why, once you've entertained people, then the education comes through subconsciously. We need to do this on a bigger scale now. I mean, we sit on such a wonderful history. We sit on such a wonderful legacy of incredible characters. If Hollywood was sitting on the characters that we're sitting on, could you imagine? We have the Pirate Queen. Imagine if the Sayyida al-Hurra. What an incredible story that is. Where if it was Hollywood was sitting on it, believe you me, they'll be making animation movies or Pixar animation films and blockbuster films and that. Like I said, Hollywood now, all they do is reboot the films. Yeah, they've got no original ideas anymore. They're just rebooting the films. We have this wonderful material. And the Muslim creatives, especially those who work in film, and investors as well, because, that's the films and a tremendous amount of investment is needed, have to see the potential. I see the potential. I see the great stories that can be made in these films. Like when every time I post a video, let's say on the Kumala Hayati and the Enong Bali, the one I wrote, everyone's writing in the comments, where's the Netflix series? They're actually saying to you, where is it? Show us the Netflix series. I can't believe no one's made a series on this. They've said it for literally so many of the videos that I've made in the comment section. They're tagging Netflix. They're trying to get their attention because they want it. They really, really want it. And I don't know why so many of why other people are not seeing this. I mean, jump on it. It needs to be told, because if we don't tell it, maybe Hollywood will jump on it eventually one day, because there's a lack of ideas in Hollywood now. And they'll take ownership of our people. We can't let that happen. We can't let our great ancestors be subject to the narrative of another industry, like like Hollywood, for instance. What will they do?
So how can we better support Muslim creatives? What can the Ummah do? What's their role?
Well, I think we have to be more open-minded. You see, people need to understand that, look, traditionally speaking, the Ummah, the society, every society, the backbone of a society, what is it? It's your doctors, your lawyers, your engineers, and they are the backbone. They're the high-status backbone of the society jobs that every parent seems like, at least in the Pakistani community, wants their children to be a dentist, etc. But we also have to recognize the fact that the role of the creative is essential, because the creative gives the shape to a society, it gives it its flavor and its distinct quality. Every time we look at a particular culture of a particular civilization, it is the mind of the creative that we're seeing, through the food, through the dress, through the architecture. It is the creative mind that's produced that. We have paralyzed the creative mind in the Muslim world. We've paralyzed it. We need to understand, and especially as we're moving to a point in the story of Muslims in Britain, where we are a patchwork of cultures, Pakistani, African, Arab cultures, right? We are not an indigenous culture. There's not an indigenous Muslim culture. There's going to come a point where the creatives are going to be where this is going to happen, and the creatives will need to be the ones to get ready to give it its shine, give it its quality, give it its texture, and we need the best minds. I mean, this will happen organically, but I think we need our creatives to feel confident. We just do. It's too long now that they've been suppressed, I think.
Okay, so my final question, looking into the future, what are the trends in this area for creative people generally, and what would you say what are the trends, or what's the future for the Muslim creative?
Well, the future for the Muslim creative is, it is whatever they want it to be. There is so much available at the fingertips now of everyone. You can have your own, you can make high quality content in your own room. That is what software is. You don't need to rely on people. If you want to do it, you can do it. You have to put forth the effort. It's a lot of effort. Believe you me, for the last 5 years or so, my life has just been absorbed into producing this. I'm single practitioner on this. This is how I like it. But you have to, I would say, you have to you have to have that self-belief that your voice means something. You have to have that self-belief, because when I did this, there wasn't really anyone else. I mean, there were some I must admit, there are some channels that do touch on Islamic history quite nicely. I give that. But I wanted to tell it in my way. I wanted to be who I was as a creative. And this is what I encourage everyone, that you can be yourself and express yourself. And you can do it. You don't have to now, have to worry about how it can get made. Well, to a degree you do. But you can do it yourself. Just a hard work and effort. And if you need to train yourself. But you can do it. It's there.
Yeah. I suppose the technology is there now. Where before you had to learn about sound. You had to learn about cameras and angles and lights. Really, the internet's made it easier, and AI, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So, anyone with minimal skill can actually enter this area. And over time, you will learn. Naturally, I'm just thinking, even 10 years ago, it was quite a steep learning curve, actually. Because I think you've got your script, you've got your story, now you've got the technical bit to actually edit it, produce it. And that maybe for a lot of people was just too steep a cliff to climb. Not anymore.
No, it's not anymore.
Now it's completely changed.
Just one voice can reach a lot of people. I sometimes think about the Muslim. I really feel that there's a lot that we need to break down in our community. I have to say, we are rife with nationalism. It is. I have to say this. It's a little off topic to what you said, but I have to get it in. Nationalism is poisoned us tremendously, and just look at the comments in some of my videos. How the great Salahuddin Ayyubi, for instance. If we look at him, if you look at I knew there was always tension between the Kurds and the Turks. Obviously, this is something that is not in my expertise to talk about their relationship. However, the Kurds themselves feel that people don't want to say that he was a Kurd, that the wider Muslim audience doesn't want to say he was a Kurd. And between the Turks and the Kurds, so heartbreaking when you see the comments in the comment section about this great man, about claiming ownership of this man, as with so many of these people. I want people to realize, that all these men and women who fought, they fought for the same purpose. And that same purpose we all need to come in line with. We need to, we have the tools now to contribute towards creating a cohesive consciousness of the Ummah, that truly we are one. As the Prophet ﷺ said in his last sermon, you are one brotherhood. It's just sometimes when we go further into the details of something, we can get lost. We have to keep it basic. So I think that with so many opportunities now available at our mercy, we can, inshallah, start making a change. I think this is really important that we do.
Absolutely.
It's about time.
Absolutely. So Khalid, Jazakallah for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
It's an insightful discussion, and I think that there is a big future really for the Muslim creative.
I hope so.
There's a lot really we have. There's a lot of history and heritage we have as well. And I think for future generations, this is really something they can get their teeth into. And I think things are changing. I grew up in an era where you had to be a doctor engineer. However, probably a good example that comes to mind is someone like Steve Jobs and Apple. And he's talked about this. He talked about how he competed with Microsoft, and a lot of it was about the creative side. And I think he's a good example to give parents when they sometimes need a proper image of what are you talking about or area you want to go in. If you do Steve Jobs and Apple, I think everyone's quite familiar with that. But Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much
for your time. I think that was a very good discussion. The Narrative House can be found on all the major social media platforms. Please like and subscribe, as this will help us with the algorithm and you'll never miss a show.